have not been to our work sessions before, this is a fairly informal meeting where we discuss county business with stuff coming to our next meeting, as well as have presentations and open bids. So the meetings are recorded and will be posted online later. We have several things on the agenda today. The first is bid opening for HVAC and another for boilers, which we'll start with. And we'll move on to brief presentations by Mr. Decker on the Longhouse Scenic Drive, Mr. Glotz on freight study, Mr. Glotz on the recycling event, and then did anyone make it here to talk about the free books for kids? Oh, very good, very good. Fantastic, so we'll have a conversation about that, and then we'll move into our quarterly objectives. We took those sticky notes that we wrote on last meeting and translated them into a digital Kanban board. So with that, let's go ahead and start with opening of the bids. What are we starting with?
The HVAC, and we received 2 bids. First one is Williams Spader.
Thank you. All right, commission the unit and the air handler, $68,500. Alternate bid 1 is $2,300 for removal of the existing one from the unit, from the roof. And then alternate bid 2, replacement of the heating coil, $3,100. Got it?
Mm-hmm. Then we have Scoble Company.
All right, Scoble's bid, total overall, $64,560. Alternate bid 1 for the removal of the existing unit, $4,090. Alternate 2, removal of the replacement of the heating coil, $6,310. Those will actually end up being very close. Either of you want to review these?
Oh, later. Now these are for the boiler. We have Rave.
How many did we get for the boiler? 3?
3.
3.
All right, this is again, Rave.
Rave.
All right. Boiler replacement, $108,000.
What was the name?
Rave.
Rave. All right.
I'm sorry, could you give me that again?
1,800. Or, excuse me, I'm sorry. 100.
One more time.
108,000.
Okay. Scoble.
All right, Scoble's was 69,480.
And the last one is William T. Spader.
Spader's bid was 75,200. Again, did you want to review these? Thank you very much. So, I believe we have both of these on the agenda to discuss on Wednesday's public meeting, where we make a determination at that meeting. Any more discussion from the board on the bids? Hearing none, I guess we'll move on. You gentlemen are welcome to stay. The meetings are public, but they're probably not interested in you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming. All right, Mr. Decker, do you want to take a seat? Jim's here to talk about the Longhouse Scenic Drive application and the idea of the county being the pass-through agent, correct?
Yes, we've been working with the U.S. Forest Service for about a year on looking at the needs of Longhouse Scenic Drive. I believe everybody's aware that we had a culvert failure last summer, early spring. that caused them to close down one lane of Longhouse Scenic Drive over in the Cayuga area. They've determined there are 224 of those culverts across the 8-mile section of Longhouse Scenic Drive, which has had no real maintenance since its construction, coincident with the Kinzua Dam back in the 60s. So the cost of renovating and replacing all those culverts is somewhere in the $25 million range. The U.S. Forest Service does not have that kind of funding available to it. So they were able to acquire funds in the $200,000 range for replacement of that one culvert that's underway. I haven't been down to see how close they are to finishing it. But effectively, they've engaged with the Washington office of the Forest Service to find and locate alternate resources, grant funding within the federal government that could help bring those dollars to play. They have very recently, last week, the Federal Department of Transportation has released their TIGER grant. That's the Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery Grant Program. They have opened that, identified the guidelines, which are the same as they've been the last 2 years, but those were open for application through October 20th is the application deadline. The Forest Service is actually preparing the application. We are including not only renovation and reconstruction of the entire Longhouse Scenic Drive, but also inclusion of the Trails at Jake's Rock connector trail systems that run between Longhouse Drive and the reservoir as a part of that overall application. The requirement is that it has to be a municipality that is submitting the grant request. So the Forest Service cannot be the applicant, the WCDA can't be an applicant, so we're seeking the support and involvement of Warren County to serve as the applicant for that TIGER grant, and if so awarded, would then be the recipient. You would be the grantee. The structure that we have envisioned is that you would then contract with the U.S. Forest Service to do the renovations and reconstruction engineering. So it will be one contract let to the U.S. Forest Service to do the Longhouse Drive construction project, and a second contract let with the WCDA to do the mountain bike trail system and structure. So the amount of involvement of the county would be basically signing the application. All of the administrative work in preparing it would be done by the Forest Service, and then administering those two contracts. There certainly will be financial reporting required from the grant. All that work will be done by the two subcontracted agencies. So there will be certainly some fiduciary oversight. You'll be receiving $25 million if everything goes right. You'll be responsible to disperse that. But any of the reporting requirements would be passed through to either the Forest Service or the WCDA at this point. So I see it as a minimal lift on the part of the county should we be successful in getting a grant award.
Jim, are the improvements also in McKean County as well?
There's that section, it'll go from Route 59 to Route 321. So yes, there will be a portion of this in McKean County, and the bulk of it being in Warren County.
Okay, I'm wondering if, and you might want to research this, if an option would be to do a joint application along with McKean County, since you've got two jurisdictions involved here. There would just have to be an agreement put in place between the two. They would, both McKean and Warren would sign the application, but Warren could be designated as the grant administrator.
That's a good idea. So let's, unless you have anything else, Jim, take questions from the commissioners and then department heads, and then if the public has comment.
Okay.
You can take that.
Yeah, that's my objection.
Hasn't been any study to determine, like, if there needs to be a wholesale reconstruction, or if there, you could do some portion of it, or like any idea of how many of those culverts are legitimately?
The Forest Service did an engineering assessment of the entire 8-mile section, and they say all of the culverts are in various states of disrepair, and to guess which one's going to fail next is impossible. So that wholesale reconstruction
It's just needed.
It's just needed. And the road's 30 plus years old and has had zero maintenance, so it's in dire need of rent.
It is a national scenic byway too.
Yep. Yep.
Is there any kind of management fee that we would be able to charge? Any such?
An administration fee.
I would, typically there are, but I will,
But we would only be the signatories, we wouldn't really be the
Right.
Forest Service would be.
Yeah, I would think our costs would be minimal. You know, solicitor looking over agreements, maybe a minor cost related to auditing. Or would that be exempt from auditing duty?
No, it would be audited, just like any pass-through.
Yeah.
I did want to question, this is not a reimbursable grant where the money is put up first and we get reimbursed. The money comes before the project.
I asked that question as well, and as to our understanding, it would not be a reimbursable.
Okay.
And they would provide the funding, and then you would disperse it.
I mean, those grants are pretty massive. I don't know anybody that would be able to put up the money for them.
No, unless it was to the state or whatever.
especially us.
That's what I wanted to be sure of, that's all.
So who conducted the study to arrive at the $25 million?
Forest Service did that. And I'm not sure if it was internally done or if they engaged someone, but it was done by the Forest Service. They've been driving this entire process, and they've engaged with us because they looked at, one, the bike trail inclusion, and they can't apply for these federal grants. They were looking for a partner in crime, so to speak.
And the Jakes Rex trails, I mean, isn't a part of the trail expansion along Longhouse Scenic Drive. I mean, that's right.
It was part of the original design. It runs from Route 59 underneath the Morrison Bridge over to the Information Center. It connects actually the Kinzu Dam to Route 321 and all of the assets in between. So it's a significant portion of the trail. It's a little different usage than the trails that we're building currently. More of a pedestrian, family-friendly walking trail as opposed to a single-track mountain biking.
Was that was dropped from the overall plan?
It's never been dropped from the plan, but we just set it aside while we raise the funds for the other mountain
The
biking.
main sections.
And recognizing this potential coming forward, we're going to see this through rather than trying to find this. There's $2 million in this project for that section of trail, so it's a significant cost for just the biking portion.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I'm asking is some element of that going to be taken care of through this process, or is this just going to focus on the maintenance of the road and the culverts?
The section of trail from 59 to 321 would be completed as a part of this project.
Okay.
So those $2 million.
There are multiple reasons to do
Right.
it.
Very good. Any other questions from the commissioners? Judy, did you have any more? Dan? Any questions from anybody else regarding the Longhouse Scenic Drive? All right, well then, next steps would be what?
Basically, you would sign the application. I will have a draft of that application provided by the Forest Service by Friday of this week that I can furnish to you to review and go through. Then it would be a matter of affixing signatures. I will find out if there's any formal resolution required.
Okay.
And I'll also give you answers to these several questions before your meeting on Wednesday.
Yes, I did have one other question. You said the grant deadline was October 20th. Is there an award deadline, so you know?
Never. Not that it's been advertised. They're closing the application date, and then it's as they look through them.
Very good. All right, well, we'll wait more information from you and the application to review.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the schedule, we have freight study.
So I stand to come here to discuss this regional freight study that was put together by the Northwest Commission. Wanted to do like a quick presentation on it just for a number of different reasons. Partly to kind of start to push a new initiative, and partly just for public information, because there are a lot of very interesting findings through the study. I'll let Dan do most of the talking as far as the description of the study, but I wanted to highlight a couple of quick things before Dan gets on his soapbox. It's a very nice soapbox, by the way. One is that Dan, our planning and zoning director, is also the chairman of the Northwest Pennsylvania Rural Planning Organization, the RPO, and chairs the Transportation Advisory Committee. I don't think that we highlight that enough. The Northwest Pennsylvania Rural Planning Organization, which will be known as RPO, is a part of the TAC, and they handle the planning for all of the PennDOT spending for road maintenance in the northwest region of Pennsylvania. Dan has done a very good job as a chairman there, and was a part of the group that put this study together, which I found incredibly informative. This was officially released June 27th was when we voted to adopt it, but since then we finally got a final copy. I'm going to provide a copy to the newspaper, and I can provide a digital copy to anyone else. I found the CD in the back of the book very helpful. I hadn't seen a CD in a while. I pulled files off of it. It was very easy. But there are a few key things that I just wanted to highlight before Dan starts just discussing the overall nature of this study. The study focuses on 5 counties in the Northwest region, which include Clarion, Crawford, Forest, Venango, and Warren. Out of those 5 counties, Warren County had the most freight traffic of any county by a huge margin. And I found through this study, Warren County actually is 13th in the state in freight traffic. 13th, which puts us in the top 20% of all the counties in the state of Pennsylvania.
To be clear, that means that we're generating
13 million tons of freight export every year. On average, well, not on average, but in 2015 we did. The next highest was Crawford, which their population is double ours. They have 5 million. So we're doubling their freight traffic, and geographically, I think we're smaller than Crawford. The next highest is Clarion at 2 million, and then it goes down to 1.5, and then Forest has 0.27. So there are also a number of other items in this that kind of showcase the high level of transportation business that this county is generating. And it was so much so that at the last TAC meeting, it was brought up the fact that everybody was kind of shocked at how much business Warren County is generating. So as a part of this, I'd like to try to have a continuing discussion, and this would be considered a project. I suppose we would put on the long-term plan to create either a freight summit or a transportation summit or some kind of meeting with community members, business leaders, people involved in the freight industry and others in order to gather more information, more anecdotal information, more data related to this situation in order to make the case to the federal government and to the state to make a greater investment in the county in transportation, very specifically to push for a major connector to one or both of the closest interstate highways, being 86 or 80. I think that especially if we can go work in conjunction with other counties, but also use this very real data that's been put together to take another shot at connecting Warren to 86 or connecting Warren to 80. It would be, I think it could be a huge boon for growth and business in the county. One of the other things I would say is the whole idea of potentially having a summit is, and I realize that the whole goal was to have Dan talk about it. Was
whose soapbox were we talking about?
I have a very big soapbox. So just give me 2 seconds. Okay, I'm almost done. Is to get some more data from local businesses related to this, because I think that the conversation we've had is this would be a massive investment by any government that would get involved in it, that the local businesses support it 100% and that they're going to find real tangible solutions from something of that nature. With that said, here's Dan with your freight update.
Okay, this is a copy of the document, by the way, and I think we're going to post it on the county's website. Jeff mentioned the RPO, or Rural Planning Organization, that Warren County is part of. There are 5 counties that are included in that. And in addition to working directly with PennDOT to plan and program projects throughout the 5-county region, we're also responsible for maintaining and updating a transportation improvement plan which spans 12 years, as well as a long-range transportation plan that spans 25 years. When we were doing the updating the region's long-range transportation plan, we had uncovered a need to take a more in-depth look at how freight movement flows throughout the 5-county region. And in determining what all we would take a look at, it included not only highways and bridges, but we also needed to look at rail, air, imports and exports, and movement of freight in general across the region. So what we had done was contracted with Baker International to assist us with developing this document, and we put together a 19-member steering committee, if you will, made up of not only the county planners from the five counties, but some PennDOT folks out of District 1. We included some major shippers throughout the region, as well as industries that utilized shipping for moving their product around. We held a number of stakeholder engagement activities to help identify the issues that the freight haulers were being faced with, and that included a series of freight focus groups, and we held one in Clarion, one in Meadville, one in Oil City, and one here in Warren. There were also telephone interviews that were conducted with both companies that actually ship as well as companies that utilize freight haulers and weren't able to make the focus groups. We had in-person discussions with some of the stakeholders, as well as providing an online survey that shippers or corporations could go to complete the survey. What we found is there were 4 major themes that emerged from this study, and those include safety and security being one of them, mobility a second, operations the third, and planning the fourth. During this process, the federal government came back to us and asked us to identify candidate critical freight corridors throughout the 5-county region. And we came up with 10 altogether, but 3 of those 10 are located in Warren County, one of them being Route 62, of course, the second, Pennsylvania Avenue, and then the third, Lexington Avenue, with the amount of truck traffic from United leaving the facility to head up to get on to Pennsylvania Avenue and on up to 62. We took a look at rail as well and identified some at-grade crossing issues that needed to be corrected. And there are some rail bridges that are actually substandard and need to be brought up to the new weight capacities that you see a lot of these railroad lines using today. So that does hamper the movement of freight by rail, causes them to take alternate routes if necessary, or decrease the speed going over these bridges to a very slow movement. Jeff had pointed out that we lead the region in terms of exports and imports and tonnages of freight, so that is something to be proud of.
Is there a breakdown of what industries are the biggest?
It's all, yeah, it is broken down by industry in each county and in the back of it in the appendix. So a lot of valuable information in here. We will use this data to support requests for funding in the future for improvements and upgrades to our transportation network. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I would encourage everyone to read this. It does have a lot of good, valuable information.
Thank you. Questions from the commissioners? Very good.
I had a couple for Dan, but I asked him beforehand and he answered them. So, I've taken this study, or I haven't physically taken this study, but I've discussed this study with business leaders at the WCCBI and a couple other organizations, and everybody, even at that level, was shocked at the findings in this study. And I think that when you kind of make that case that we lead the region in freight traffic, especially for any rural county, and we do so with very limited connection to any major roadways, I think that a lot of people are very surprised by that. And so my hope is that that this conversation could be a first step to putting together some kind of leadership initiative in order to advocate at the state and at the federal government for greater investment. This is the perfect time to do it, especially with the conversation about an infrastructure package happening in Washington. This was something that we discussed while we were in DC when we met with the White House intergovernmental team. So my hope is to use the contacts that we made there, and then also to use as much information as we can gather from local businesses in order to advocate for greater investment.
You make a valuable point. With the funding agencies today, they're wanting to see a particular project identified in a plan before they'll even consider it for funding. It's no more of this pie in the sky wish list stuff. It's got to be in a plan that's supported by the governments and the public in general.
And it's important to note that part of the discussion about this too is that you have a plan at least for a connector to 86. You also have a plan with the connector to 80. However, in both cases, those need to be revisited and updated. 16 years ago, 15 years ago, 15 years ago, there was a plan to connect Warren to 86 via 62. Jim Lynch was the representative at the time, and they were very close to potentially putting something together. But there was an issue in New York State as far as like funding on their end went. This is something where the hope is to also build partnerships with Chautauqua County, counties in New York State, and then also our representatives and others, as many as possible. The more legitimate information that we can share with them, the better chance we have of making our case. I think the other thing that I want to stress is weighing the legitimate need. Making sure that businesses are really behind this and that really feel like it's going to be a growth opportunity for them, I think is going to be one of the biggest selling points as well. So we have to get that information and get supporters behind that as well.
Dan, when was the study conducted?
This freight study, over the course of 6 months prior to June began soon after the first of the year.
When was the last study done?
It was done as part of our long-range transportation plan a number of years ago.
How did the numbers compare? Do you know?
We didn't get in that detailed with the previous freight studies. This is the first one that has really dived deep into the statistics. I mean, it even goes as far as numbers of crashes involving truck traffic.
I think it'd be interesting to see if our freight trail traffic has increased greatly, or has it remained the same? Has it always been this way? Has it lessened?
Yeah, we've seen some changes, particularly when the paper mill closed down in Erie, and we had the rail sending pulpwood to the paper mill. And there was a concern that it was going to actually put that rail out of business. But what we saw then is United began to shift its shipping a lot on rail, and so that's what sustained that system through Warren today. So things change, and for the better.
According to the chart, the last regional freight study was done in 2006, so 12 years ago.
I knew it was,
or 11 years ago.
Very good. Any questions from anybody else? Lots. Very good. announce the recyclathon.
Yeah.
The other thing that's going to be coming up too shortly, MCM's finishing up our commodity flow study, hazardous materials, and commodity flow study, and we're going to go right along with the freight study. It's mostly, hazardous materials, but there's commercial traffic and also one's kind of specific. And that'll show some of that stuff of all the rail, that change. And in that time frame, a lot of the change too in the rail, like Dan said, went from pulpwood to stuff going in and out of United. One of the big things is ethanol. Ethanol going into United and being used in the gasoline. So that'll be seen in this study.
Another large shipper is Blair, or Bluestone they call themselves today. Worley Industries. We have a number of industries.
When you get the weight to the tonnage, you get, you start hauling.
Oh, yeah.
You start hauling one chunk of steel that fills a tractor trailer. That's a couple of those, that's the heavier products.
One of the things they talk about in the study too is the concern over safety, because there is a higher level of wrecks and accidents as a result of driving in poor conditions on suspended roads.
You're good. Sorry.
Hey Josh, got another recycling event coming up. It's on Saturday, October 7th. This one is going to be at what used to be Russell Elementary School. It's the school district central office now. It'll be in the parking lot there. 9 to 1 is the time frame that has been selected for that. Again, anyone who would like to bring recyclables to the event, you're asked to either call or go online and schedule your appointment time. The reason for the calling or the appointment times by the internet is to allow the company some general ideas of what is going to be collected in terms of numbers of items and bulk of it, so that they can bring an adequate number of containers with them. They are coming out of Cochranton, and so they need to bring with them all of the containers that will be utilized for the collection event. On the flyer, it lists the items that are accepted. I just want to stress that tires are not one of those. We are looking to try to come up with a tire recycling event, but this one here would be electronics and household hazardous waste like paints and cleaners and stuff like that you would find around the home that you have a difficult time disposing of. So the costs for each item are, they're by pound, identified at the bottom of the sheet. So if anybody has questions about it, Pam, you willing to take phone calls, they can call my office as well, and we can answer any questions about the event.
Very good, thank you. Any questions regarding this? All right. Thank you very much.
I'm going to head out if you don't mind.
Yep. Did you want to join us at the table to talk about the free books for kids?
Sure.
Thank you very much. All right, let me introduce this a little bit. A member of the community who works with Free Books for Kids approached us several months ago probably about reviving kind of mobile bookmobile, which at least I remember using quite frequently as a kid, and asking the county for support. We felt at the time that it wasn't viable for us to do that kind of a program, at least not yet. But we did think that we could help, at least in one way. There's a problem that we have, particularly with kids in the summer that are in more rural areas, not having access to books. So they're learning throughout the school year, and then come summer, they're not spending any time reading, and by the time they come back to school, they've lost a lot of what they've already learned. So, many of those kids are in the Children Youth Services system, and the county touches them in some way. So we thought maybe that there was some way we could get some of the books that this organization has into the kids' hands through our employees. So I brought it up to Mary, and I think we came up with a solution that we brought out in order to discuss that. So with that introduction, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Commissioner. One of the things that we talk about is just the engagement that we have with kids in reading and with their parents, and that's what the focus is with books for kids. And so we talked with Adam, and since it touches all the kids, whether they're in children and youth or family-based or daycares, how can we get books to them? And systems of care is to work with families, kids, and systems to engage them. So we do have some funding available that through systems of care that the grant could help with different types of books. Whether, and Adam, we focus on trauma with kids, but in talking with them, saying that there's almost about any book, I guess, when you look at the system, that you could use. So we could work with Ruby and some of her books. Adam has purchased books for the school and the counselors to talk about trauma, but even with some of the issues that are multi-generational kids living together, what do they face? Whether it's a grandparent in a nursing home, they have books like, Grandma Didn't Wave Back, talking about Alzheimer's, and you have off the top of my head, when Shoes Eat Socks, about kids and some of the clothing and malfitting that they go through. So just anything like that. And Adam, of course, has more of an array and a connection. I guess he has quite the account with Amazon with the different types of books.
To say the least. I think in the last month I've spent $20,000 on trauma resource libraries.
Wow.
So, and those are going to get rolled out through the school districts, through Forest and Warren school districts in each school. And every library will have a program built in it. So my work cut out for me in the next couple months. I'm not sure exactly, what the boundaries and parameters are for the books that we're looking for, but I'm sure I'll work with whoever we need to get it done. Yeah.
So at this point, how can we, the county, and how can the community help?
Well, I think just with what books and, age range, when we talk to Ruby, they look with anybody who's, from preschool on. So just looking at,
I think a big part of system of care that we're lacking, and the goals for system of care for our counties is to build a county leadership team, which we've done, we meet monthly, to build a family-driven system of care, which is, at some point we would like to have a major family group that meets on a regular basis who does things in the community, whether it's, parent peering, where they mentor in homes, whether it's, they run their own events, because when the funding runs out in 2 years, it has to be sustainable. So those are the main goals. Another part is youth driven. So we have like some sort of a major youth leadership team in the counties that, that are self-sustainable. And then the trauma informed, which the trauma informed has been a lot easier, obviously, to do, because a lot of that is, you hold events and people come to them. So as far as our, the system of care goal for books for kids, we would get face-to-face engagement too, you know what I mean, through the grant itself. I think it'd be a great thing.
and then when you look at sustainability, you would look at the fact that there is Kids for Books. That program's already established.
Sure. And it's an icebreaker for the grant to get, face-to-face time in rural areas. How do you can't go knock on somebody's door and try to engage with families in rural areas, we all grew up in rural Pennsylvania. You're not welcome.
Well, shotgun will reach.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I think that, this is a, pretty new introduction to me, but, I'm all for it.
Very good. Thank you. So what are we tangibly doing right now?
Well, I think just to, I mean, we can either pull Ruby in and talk about some of the books that we can look at and just look at an array of books. And, I mean, you know, there's thousands of books out there. If you look at, I think Adam's last figure for the school district kids, and Forrest, what were you looking at, over 2,000 kids?
Yeah, we have about 2,000. For Red Ribbon Week, we got 2,000 bracelets. So that's what Betsy Miller thought we would probably be at, somewhere in there for both school districts.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. So those are kids
That we could look at purchasing books for.
K through 12 in Forest Moore counties, about 2,000 students.
so the System of Care grant would actually pay for some of the books.
Mhm.
We could pay for lots of books.
More generically, how can the community reach out to help these kids in need? Can they volunteer to read to kids, that sort of thing?
I think those are some major hurdles where we're at right now, is how do we get that community involvement, on a regular basis, meeting. So I would say in the next, 60 to 90 days, by, the end of 2017, I would really like to have venues aren't a problem, like my office is at the Recovery Center for Beacon Light. We can always hold events there. We can always hold events, wherever we need to. I think the public library is a good place, to have meetings for the public. There's a stigma on mental health. There's a stigma on, human services and CYS. The YMCA, you have to pay to go there, so that's really not a place we want to do it. But I think that there's, it could be maybe the faith-based community that we target for venues, in a church or something. Once we kind of can get people to all huddle in the same place, I think we can start to make progress, So
Okay.
those are the goals here.
So what are your next steps?
Well, as far as this week, it's the end of the fiscal year for the grant, so I'll be tying a bunch of things together. And my next steps in the schools are really already, the path's kind of laid out. I've funded a lot, and we're going to bring a whole new trauma curriculum and really change the culture in Warren County School District on a daily basis. So we're bringing in training, libraries. It'll probably start out with administration, counselors, curriculum advisors, and from there we'll trickle down into the teachers and the students. And Warren County School District is really engaged on it. They really want to bring that, suicide prevention, bullying, trauma, trauma from bereavement, kids that are, have incarcerated parents that have lost their parents, divorce, and really that's the goal for the schools. The goals for the community are, I think I've discussed that as much as I need to, but how to roll it out is sort of, that's kind of the hurdle, you know what I mean? I would, if I knew the right questions to ask for help, I would ask them. You know what I mean? So as of right now, we're kind of in a hard spot. The grant's been around for 2 years now. I've been involved for about 3 months, so I don't have all the answers yet. But I'm working.
So the books we could purchase relatively quickly.
The
that's
books
the
we can
thing.
do quick.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys, just the school district, you'd have your hands full there.
Getting the foot in the door, I think he's done a great job with doing that.
Yeah, it wasn't hard. It just needed to be, I just had to approach them and then you have the scheduling times until you can really get it.
And I think that was the most difficult thing because the school calendar's already set.
Yep.
So trying to find days when they could free up time for the school personnel to attend.
November 14th, I have a 3-hour session with the administrators and the counselors and the curriculum advisors from all the schools. And that's when I'm really going to roll out this. It's a bullying curriculum, suicide prevention, and trauma. And from there, we're going to move into employing a training company out of New Jersey called Lakeside Global. They've been the one. Has anybody here been in Trauma 101? Done any of the trauma trainings that we've had around? Yeah. As Mary has, I have. So.
I thought they were put on by my wife, actually. I mean, not that she's traumatized. No, they had a whole section that was about active listening. That was, and then we got done with that section. I remember going up to the person who put it on and said, were you really here like for this, or did she talk to you?
So yeah, that's,
Not drunk.
those are, doing that stuff is definitely cool. And then on January 15th, I have to do a presentation in front of, I think they gave me an estimate of about 500 that I'm going to bring a professional in. I'll do some introductions and some things like that, but I'll bring a professional in to really lay that out there for everybody on what the goal is for the school district. They're really on board and they're really excited about it. So that is, my opinion was that's the best way to reach every youth in the counties, is go to schools, so, and they're receptive. Very good. Community-wise, like I said, it's that's where I'm kind of struggling. I think there's a lot of interest in parents in Warren County School District and Forest County as well. There's plenty of interest there. It's hooking them on an idea, that I really need to.
And the time, that was one of the things that you heard at the CAS board, at the CAS meeting, is that parents just don't have time.
Right. So we don't have to there'll be a lot of planning around the first event that I do for that. And that's probably going to entail having daycare during the meeting, you know what I mean? Where we have a children's program at the same time as we have the family, program.
I think a lot of it depends on the quality of the programming too, and whether it's, it's easy to always want to bring people in that are experts from some field, and then they give a presentation. I would recommend having some portion of it be parent to parent, or making parents part of the biz, the setup. We had like a parent meeting that we did for a while down at the hospital, and my wife all put it together, and it was related, and it was part of the, I don't know if it was part of our special connections group or whatever, but they had people come in and do presentations on like dietary, like nutritional issues with children with autism, for instance, and they would do a whole presentation on strategies that you can use and stuff like that. The people that came most consistently were the ones that felt like they got something out of it, like they would make the time to go to it. There was a group that we were involved in even before that, where if you went and then it was just parents, and then all it was everybody would sit and cry on each other's shoulders, and there was no, like, it was nice in that sense, but it was like, okay, I've got enough of this at home, like I want to learn something, or so it has to be a mix, I guess, is what I would say or recommend, and the tough part's going to be is that the parents are going to be really busy. The staff that are going to do the presentations or organize the event are also going to be really busy. So having like a consistent, like well-run, interesting event, that's kind of the challenge. If it's good, people will
Structure, multiple parts.
Yeah. And the other thing is I would also recommend that you have something that's expansive to the extent of that there are networking opportunities there. So what happened with a lot of the parents is they would show up and they would find out about services during the course of the meeting that they didn't know existed because one of the other parents' kids was getting that service and they didn't know about it. So like trying to figure out a way to have like a multitude of information or an offering of different things would be helpful too.
Yeah, and with just coming here, I've seen the need for, there's no major resource where I can look in and I can see all the schools, I can see all the different programs that are available and what each one of the service providers provides. And it's kind of been like you have to go, you go to each one and you're like, okay, what all do you provide? And Human Services is a giant resource, and they know so much that sometimes it's hard to absorb it all, all at one time. But I think that's a great point too. Is when you have a parent group, is to bring in the collaborators on what's really going on and what we're offering.
It's a very delicate thing because everybody that shows up is going to be nervous about being there. They're going to think they don't know anything. They're going to have a lot of them have a hard time asking questions or advocating for themselves. And so there's, it's not hard for them to get overwhelmed and then just, walk away. So it's there's no easy answer to it,
One thing we're doing right now that's part of the grant is you do 30 surveys with families every year, and then you take every one of those 30 in 6 months, you review them every 6 months over the course of the 4 years. So it just, the list compiles with how many families you're getting face-to-faces with. And I think that's really going to be our core group, is the people that are willing to sit down for an hour and discuss their entire life and tell you, divulge. I mean, the questions are very, very personal. So if they're willing to do that, I feel like they're probably willing to, be a part of the group. So we'll be working on that core group.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions regarding this? Very good. We took the quarterly objectives and put them up on the screen. In the interest of time, what I'd like to do is skip the quarterly objectives that we were planning on discussing, and instead moving around the agenda. For the next public meeting, there's only 2 points that I believe we need to talk about. One would be the top agreement, and the other would be SBA. Why don't we start with SBA since it's first on the agenda?
I brought up at last work session that we had trying to switch our copper wires from Youngsville to our Sheffield power site. Some of my copies it's
Josh doesn't like your agreement.
Youngsville TV was going to take part of it, and SBA was going to take part of it. The problem is they're disagreeing on how they're each going to do their part. One wants to do it one way and one wants to do it the other way, and neither of them is going to get away from that. And that's the last thing I need is another. I want to get away from the finger pointing. So that's a major problem. I have a solution that SBA will do the entire project from point to point, but there's a one-time outlay of $7,500.
Okay, so to be clear, we talked about all this last week. It was basically revenue or expenditure neutral.
Correct.
Now we're saying it will be a one-time outlay of $7,500.
Yes.
And the question is, where can we get that money? This is on the agenda to talk about on Wednesday, so we need to come up with an answer real fast.
I mean, is this something that has to be done by the end of this year, or can we budget for it for next year?
It really needs done.
The main problem is that
We're having issues, and what the problem is Verizon is saying, well, we've got your within 2 decibels,
Mm-hmm.
and SBA, or not SBA, but Windstream is saying, well, we got it within 2 decibels. That's your standard. Well, we all know what 2 plus 2 is. And then we have, if it's off by more than 3 decibels, we have problems setting off sirens. These guys say, well, you're in specs, we're in specs. Well, you put the 2 together, and they're not. And that's where the problem lies in. Is we're having issues setting off sometimes Clarendon siren and Sheffield siren. And unfortunately, nothing major's happened that we've had issues, but
So I mean, have you been able to quantify how often, like like outage you have? Like it just occasionally it happens. Like you go to set the siren off.
it seems very intermittent because, and unfortunately, it's weather dependent.
Mm-hmm.
When it's rainy, copper lines don't working well.
Mm-hmm.
It's been good the last couple of weeks because we haven't had any rain.
Mm-hmm.
If it starts raining tonight and we try to set their siren off, there'll probably be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just
so. To be clear, this is a pretty important public safety issue.
yeah. It's communications with that entire quadrant of the county,
Mm-hmm.
Cherry Grove, Clarendon, Sheffield area. I'm sure Judy can find it somewhere.
Well, I think between now, I mean, my assumption would be this is another thing where between now and Wednesday we'd have to look at the current budget and what we have left and then reallocate something. And then have to make a budget adjustment on Wednesday. in order to accommodate it.
Has Bill Gallagher been consulted in
Yes.
this?
Yeah, he's very, adamant that this is the answer, because Verizon and Windstream just aren't, they just won't, Yeah, I've discussed this with Bill and numerous times, There's another component of this of changing the internet in Youngsville that Bill's, I don't want to say has concerns with, but wants to add a little bit to it, and that's something we would talk about for next year. And what that would do is it would bring internet service, redundant internet service to the courthouse via another path. If something would go down here, the carrier would go down here, it would bring it in another path. But that involves some firewall things, and that would be on the budget next year. It's not something we need to do.
Okay.
prior
Is
to
it
that.
anything the townships would pitch in for?
Probably our responsibility.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, it is a 911 eligible expense. There's still money left in the account.
I was assuming it wasn't because you were bringing this up. It is 911?
Oh yeah, it is 911 eligible because it's communications. Yeah.
But I think then we need to just review that and then come up with a solution, like money-wise.
Yeah, the money that is in that account that's left over from other years that we could.
Yeah, because all it would take is that thing not working, or
Yes.
any communications would go down in somebody's, or one of the factories out there, or
Right.
business to burn down, and somebody would not be happy about it.
Right.
On the reporting for last year's budget, the year-end report, didn't you put something aside for contingent
Yes.
projects coming
Yes.
up so that this could come out of that?
Yes, it can come out of that.
Okay, we'll have to have a conversation, I guess, about where that 7,500 comes from, but thanks for the update. Next is the top repayment of funds.
Well, I was going to ask the reporter to leave and put this, I know this is unusual, to ask for an executive session, but I think it's something that the three commissioners, and I'd like Julie to stay for
Okay.
to discuss.
Is there anything else that anyone wants to bring to the meeting before we go into executive session? If not, then let's just go ahead and effectively adjourn the meeting and us work the same. Thank you.
Thank you.